Welcome to the People Experience Pulse podcast, your gateway to the new frontier of human experiences at work. On the PX Pulse, we're all about elevating experiences, fostering belonging, and building remarkable workplace cultures in a fast evolving world. On today's episode, Vicki Flier Hudson and Jeff Bond discuss inclusive leadership in a global context. They debunk common myths about inclusion and provide strategies for enhancing cross-cultural communication. You'll hear how listening, embracing different cultures, and being intentional about communication can enhance your leadership. Stay tuned to learn how to integrate more inclusivity into your leadership practices for your distributed and global teams.
Are you looking to make your workplace more human? Check out my friends at CoolLeaf. What I love about CoolLeaf is that it helps leaders create connection, engagement, and recognition. You can celebrate team wins, reward colleagues, and have fun with your coworkers. You can build a culture of appreciation and feedback that boosts morale, retention, and performance. CoolLeaf also simplifies measuring and improving the employee experience with pulse surveys, rewards, and integrations with your everyday tools. To learn more about CoolLeaf and how it can make your work more human, visit coolleaf.com/trycoolleaf. That's COOLEAF.com/trycoolleaf to book your free demo today and see how top workplaces use CoolLeaf to put their people first and thrive.
Hello, listeners. Before we dive into today's episode, we have an important announcement. After careful consideration, we have decided to pause our podcast. This decision allows us to focus on serving our latest clients and creating exceptional people experiences. We appreciate your support and understanding and hope you enjoy today's episode. Thank you for being part of our journey.
Welcome back, People Experience leaders, to another episode of the People Experience Pulse, where we focus on empowering senior leaders and experts in employee experience, particularly in large distributed organizations. And today's episode is part of our Strategies for Success series, and we are diving into inclusive leadership in a global context. I am here with my co-host, Jeff. Jeff, how are you feeling today?
Hey, Vicki, I'm feeling pretty good. It's summertime here in Atlanta. It's super hot, as we were just talking about. We've been spending a lot of time at the pool with our kids and just trying to keep them occupied. So all in all, things are pretty good. How about you?
I'm doing well. I just have humidity hair. It was 92% humidity at 6:15 in the morning when I went out to walk. So glad we're not on video.
Thank goodness for audio podcasts.
Absolutely. So thank you for asking. Now, on to our topic. Inclusive leadership is such an important thing to discuss, especially as our workforce becomes more global every day. So let's get started and explore how we can all become more inclusive leaders in a global context.
So today we're going to be tackling a big question for all of you out there. How do you lead inclusively when inclusion has so many meanings around the globe? It's a nuanced topic because we found that inclusion really isn't a one-size-fits-all concept.
Absolutely. Inclusion varies so widely depending on so many different contexts, culture, generation, gender, age, etc. So, for example, in the US, diversity efforts often focus on race and gender, but in other countries, the focus might be more on class or generation or other factors.
So given these local contexts, we really need to be able to dive in to that as an essential for effective leadership. So we're going to debunk some common myths, as we often do, and then provide you with 4 ways to enhance cross-cultural communication to overcome these challenges.
So, let's start with some myths. Myth number 1, inclusion looks the same around the world. This is simply not true. As I said before, in the US, our diversity efforts often focus on race and gender, but in other countries, other regions even within the US, the focus might be different. So we kind of have to make that assumption not to make assumptions.
That's a really great point. And then myth number 2 is that you have to be an expert in every culture to be an inclusive global leader. Thank goodness that's not true, because that is not me. I'm on the learning journey like all of you. And for me, it's all about being curious being willing to learn and to listen to those from different cultures.
Exactly. And another myth is being an inclusive leader means being perfect in your actions. Actually, it's quite the opposite. The reality is that striving for perfection can keep us from taking action. So it's important to acknowledge that making mistakes and taking accountability is part of the learning process.
100%. So the key is to keep moving forward, learning from all these experiences as well as from each other. So let's share some strategies with our listeners. What are some effective ways to foster inclusive leadership, Vicki?
One of my favorite strategies, which is extremely effective, as you know, is conducting a listening tour. So, this means actively engaging the people you're going to work with from different regions and different cultures to understand their perspectives on inclusion. In other words, don't assume that you know what they need. You've got to ask them directly.
I've really enjoyed doing this kind of work with you, Vicky. And one of the favorite tactics within this that has been really meaningful and I've seen be super effective is just scheduling one-on-one or small group sessions with employees from different regions. So an example would be just set up a virtual coffee chat or a lunch meeting. If you're distributed and you can only do it virtually, set up a 25-minute or 45-minute short meeting, not up until the hour or half hour. Build some buffer time in to respect time and to really come prepared with some good questions. But make it to where employees feel comfortable sharing their thoughts, as well as any colleagues that you have in leadership. And then within that, take detailed notes and look for common themes or unique insights. Really take all of that data that you've aggregated and try to find some common threads and threads of truth that allow you to adapt your organization towards an experience that meets their specific needs. And by including them in that listening tour, they will feel like they have agency, like they will have actually directed the initiatives that you're setting forth, which is a really considerate thing to do.
Exactly. I mean, I know that, you and I have walked into a client initiative kind of thinking in advance that we sort of understand what they need because we've been listening to maybe a leader or two or whatever. And then we do the listening tour and we're like, wow, I had no idea that they were so concerned about X, Y, or Z. That's why those are so important. And it's really important to ask open ended questions about their experiences and perspectives on inclusion. So rather than yes or no questions, but questions like, well, what challenges are you facing leading across cultures? And what skills would help you be more inclusive or meet those challenges? Let them just talk. And your job is basically to listen and to clarify what's going to be confidential and what's not,
Yeah, those are great questions. You'll learn so much just by asking those and being quiet and listening, taking notes.
for sure.
So, another strategy is using company wide events to showcase different cultures and locations. Rotating MCs for these events, like all hands meetings or town halls or ask me anything type meetings, they can really help to highlight the various perspectives and make diverse people within your organization visible, which is a great signal to everybody. Wouldn't you say, Vicky?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Visibility is huge because a lot of times people learn from what leaders role model, whether those leaders are aware that they're role modeling or not. So that means that if the leader makes that choice to say, have rotating MCs or have some sort of cultural spotlight segment in their company newsletter or during team meetings where employees can present about their culture, those leaders are role modeling their actions and other people will follow. I mean, that's just kind of how it works. I've noticed a pattern that when you have an initiative around inclusion or cross cultural competency, if the top level leader is not on board, it's usually not successful, even if the people underneath are championing it a lot. And so it really proves how important it is for those leaders to be role modeling inclusion.
Absolutely. And there's several ways you can do that in meetings, but other ways that you can really amplify culture within your organization is to maybe even organize a half day or a full day culture day where employees can set up virtual booths to showcase artifacts or music or traditions like recipes and cooking from their culture. I know many organizations that we partner with will do that at least once a year. And it really enlivens the culture and brings people closer to one another so that there's greater empathy, which leads to greater collaboration and just understanding connection within a global workforce.
That's true. And we need that right now because, in some ways we're so disconnected, but things like that can help greatly. And the other thing that leaders really need is, as you said earlier, Jeff, that, you don't have to be an expert in every culture. If you work with India, China, Namibia, and Germany, you don't have to be an expert in all of those cultures. But there are some culture general skills that are important for any leader to have, like active listening, curiosity, accountability, and non defensiveness, which are two of my favorites.
Yeah, I'd love to focus in on the accountability piece and being able to set clear expectations for inclusive behavior and holding everyone accountable. And not only inclusive behavior, but how we get work done within the organization. Because at the end of the day, it's results that matter most. It's not about butts and seats or how much time, your little green dot was on within your Slack or your Microsoft Teams platform. It's about getting things done, leaving things in a better place than where you found it, and building connection amongst your team because great teams win. You have to have that camaraderie across a global workforce, which is complex. So these cultural general skills really helps to shape that inclusive environment to where getting things done and being accountable becomes a little bit easier.
Yeah, absolutely. And accountability is it's interesting that we're both really zeroing in on that because it's also so important in your development as an inclusive leader because that's always there. You're always developing as an inclusive leader. You've never totally made it to the end of that journey. But in order to keep moving the needle on that development, you have to be willing to know that sometimes you're going to mess up and just be willing to A, take accountability, and B, provide some kind of plan for remediation. So if you're a leader and you do something, you make a mistake, let's say along racial lines or gender lines, you misgender someone or you say something that wasn't quite, what you should have said in a racial context, take accountability, apologize, and then say, here's how I'm going to do better. And this isn't a shameful act for a leader. It's the total opposite, in my opinion. It's just role modeling what needs to be done to move everybody along that development journey.
Yeah, I do that with my kids all the time too at home. Whenever I mess up at home, I'm quick to apologize to them and just demonstrate what it means to be imperfect but humble in my leadership of them, and they're quick to forgive, and in the workplace people are quick to forgive as well. But if you try to bury it and you become defensive or you try to hide a misstep, then it really can be more harmful to the relationships that you have within your organization. So it's a really important piece is that accountability for that reason.
That is so true. And another really key piece is being intentional with communication. I think we've noticed working with our clients that most breakdowns in the global workforce come from some sort of miscommunication or lack of it, or not enough of it, or something along those lines. So, what would you provide as an example of things that folks need to think about with communication?
Communicating about how we communicate is super important. I think
Exactly.
regularly seeking feedback on how your communication is being received and being able to make adjustments as needed. What are the norms of how we communicate, how we get things done, how we work synchronously and asynchronously to respect time and give each other space to actually get things done. There's so many companies out there that are spending the entirety of their days meeting with other people, but they're never getting anything done. And so creating spaciousness by having good lines, clear lines of communication and asynchronous tools and norms are so incredibly important in today's world.
It's so true. I almost feel like there's no such thing as over communication in a global team. And especially for global leaders who, again, that's what their part of their job is to set those really clear expectations. And they can role model inclusive behavior in communication by doing things like, using very clear and simple language. So most companies and most departments within companies have their own language, a ton of acronyms, jargon that goes along with that. But it's important for leaders to model that by defining acronyms and to avoid or define jargon for people who may not know, especially new folks onboarding, like, what is this? And it's really actually quite challenging because acronyms and jargon are just sort of built into our everyday communication. But it's important to be intentional about that, as well as things like time zones, language barriers. I always advise my teams, like, talk about the potential of language barriers and accent barriers. Everyone has an accent to someone. And so it really pays to talk about, well, what will you do if you don't understand each other? Because what a lot of teams do is avoid each other when they don't understand. But the leader can model that by saying, let's discuss that. Let's talk about what would happen. And, let's respect the languages on the team and even honor and acknowledge them. So it's all about just saying these things out loud and explicitly, as opposed to assuming that everyone's on board.
Absolutely. Yeah. And working with the ways in which you say that up front is always helpful, kind of wordsmithing the way in which you approach people with kindness and respect, but that you're explicit about the things that you need to communicate and the things that you need in order to collaborate within an organization. Because when those two things break down, it's detrimental to your productivity. And that gap is always the broken link in the chain that kind of impedes progress in your business.
That is so true. I am with you on that. So, folks, to summarize, there are 4 practical things that you can do right now to enhance inclusive leadership in a global context. Number 1, do a listening tour. So always listen first, engage with your global teams and ask them about their experiences and perspectives on inclusion, especially if you're starting like a training initiative. I mean, Jeff, we don't even do any training initiatives or anything without a listening tour first, right? Number 2 is to use company-wide events to showcase different cultures. I mean, you have the captive ear of the whole company, so why not rotate MCs and have some diverse representation and maybe have a cultural spotlight? Number 3, focus on those culture general skills. And remember, that journey is never over, but you can always work on active listening, just being curious and non-defensive, because these skills are so important for effective cross-cultural communication, but mostly leadership, which is so key. And number 4, be super intentional and explicit about your communication. In other words, talk about how you're going to talk.
So as we wrap up, remember that inclusive leadership is not about perfection. And thank goodness it's not. It's about ongoing learning, curiosity, and action.
Yes, I'm also grateful that it's not about perfection. Our journey in fostering inclusive workplaces continues always for life. And we're here to support you with insights and tools. So for more information and resources, visit us at peoplefirstelevation.com and don't hesitate to reach out for a chat.
Thank you all for joining us today on the People Experience Pulse. Your commitment to developing people-first workplaces is what makes this community so impactful. Every effort, no matter how small, brings us closer to a future where work is a platform for connection, understanding, and shared success.
Absolutely. So until next time, keep communicating and leading with empathy, keep bridging those cultures, and most importantly, keep elevating the human experience in every interaction, every project, every day. Bye for now. Thank you for joining us for another insightful episode of the People Experience Pulse. Now the real challenge begins, putting what you've learned into practice. The change you create, no matter how small, could be the spark that ignites an exceptional people experience in your organization and beyond. If you found value in today's conversation, we'd greatly appreciate it if you took a moment to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. Your feedback helps us deliver high-value content and reach more listeners like you. You can find other inspiring episodes and additional resources at our website, thepxpulse.com. Join our community at thepxpulse.com. Thank you again for joining us on the People Experience Pulse. Until next time, remember, the heartbeat of any organization is its people. Let's make every pulse count.
Thank you for joining us for this episode. As we mentioned at the beginning, we have made the decision to pause our podcast. This decision comes after much thought and allows us to focus our attention on serving our new clients and the people within these wonderful organizations to build amazing people experiences at work. We want to express our deepest gratitude to all of our listeners for your support, feedback, and engagement over the past year. It has been a pleasure sharing this journey with you. While we don't have a timeline for resuming the podcast, we encourage you to stay connected with us on LinkedIn and our website, peoplefirstelevation.com. Thank you once again for being a part of our community.